Guys, second lesson of the week. We're moving on to a different topic this week. It's sort of links in pretty closely, I think. It's still about training sessions and practice and skills. But instead of talking about skills, we're talking about practice this week. But before we move on, I've put this slide in to make sure people are watching the video. Obviously, if you're listening to me, you're watching the video. But do this every week. I'm going to do a video every week, all being well, and it's just a much better way for you to learn and try and understand things. And from the people that I've spoken to, they really get the hang of the topics more when they've watched my video. So just pause me whenever you need to do a bit of work, and then you won't even need to look at the PowerPoint, and it'll probably save you a load of time as well, I reckon. Okay, so let's move on. So just realised I deleted the slide with the learning objective on. Basically, the learning objective is to understand practice structures and use examples of them in sports. Pretty simple one today. I think it's a bit of a shorter lesson. You'll be happy with me that I had an extended answer lesson up in front of me, ready to go. And I thought, that's a bit harsh, 2 extended answers in 2 weeks. So we'll save that one for a little bit later on. And we'll need to come back to skills anyway, just to interleave that information, and it'll get stuck in our brain a bit better. So you're going to be working it in your books, I'm presuming, most of the time here. If you're using Class Notebook, feel free. You might just need to give me a heads up for me on your assignment for me to go and look at that. But I'm presuming most of you are writing your notes at home. So, title, practice structures, and I'm going to give you 4 different types of practice today. But before we do that, we need to sort of work out what practice structures means, because you could use that in you could apply it to any subject really, and it doesn't really make sense. It doesn't, to me, that doesn't say, oh, this is to do with PE. So let's look at that word practice first. Where have we heard that word before? I don't use it that often, really. I use the word practice as something else when I'm referring to sport. So if I'm saying I'm going to football practice, just ignore that. That's the postman at the door. I'll let my wife get it. Just another Amazon package. So when I say I'm going to football practice, I'm going to football training. So for me, practice in this situation means training. And structures for me is how that's set up. So how is it structured? How is the training session structured? So that's what that title means for me. Anything for me?
Just your wage slip.
Just my wage slip, right? Okay, that's important. So how is that training session structured? And that's what we're going to look at today. And there's different ways you can structure training sessions, and there's different advantages and disadvantages to each, and that's what we're going to look at today. So there's 4 we're going to learn, and then we're going to apply each of them. So we're going to look at the first 2 here. And before I give you the definitions of them, we are going to use the words again, just like we did with the title, to try and understand what each one means. So what massed practice means and what distributed practice means. So let's look at massed first. So when something's massed, what does it mean? If you mass things up, what does that mean? For me, a mass is a sort of a big structure. It's a big thing where you put loads of things together. That's a sort of they're the thoughts that come into my brain as soon as I see the word massed. En masse is a phrase you might hear, which is where everyone goes somewhere en masse, which means everyone goes somewhere together. So maybe we're starting to piece things together. It's a bit of a harder one to try and put to a practice session, to a training session. If we look at distributed, when you distribute things, you share them out, don't you? You separate them and share them out. So that one sort of gives us a bit more of an idea of what we might be expecting in these definitions. Okay, so you can either pause me and have a think for yourself, or maybe make some notes on that. I know some of you will have sort of written down the meanings of distributed and massed there. It's always a good thing to do. It'll help you get the information to stick up there. So here's the definitions. Just let me move myself. Right. So if we look at massed practice first, these are sessions that are long with short breaks. They usually are used by experienced sports people, and they're used mostly for basic skills. So we're actually starting to see where skills come into this. So if you've not done the skills lesson for whatever reason, I think everyone has, go back and just make sure you get your head around that first before you do this. But it's used, but mostly for basic skills. So an example would be a rally in badminton. You've all done that, a rally backwards and forwards in badminton, where the learner of the skill must repeatedly perform drop shots. In fact, the learner of the skill is probably not the right phrase there. Probably a better word would be just the athlete. So they're repeatedly performing drop shots, and then that causes fatigue and simulates the later stages of the game. Don't worry about that bit for now. Okay, so it's basically basic skills. Most people, all you guys in our class, could just stand back, sending a shortcut backwards and forwards, basic skill, overhead clear or drop shot or something, without too much effort. So we wouldn't need to break that down. We wouldn't need to make it easier. We could just do it over and over again. We could do it en masse almost. Yeah, see why I'm trying to get those words in there. We could just do it over and over again without any real problems. And we could do it for a long time without needing any breaks, because it's not that difficult, apart from unless you get tired. Distributed practice is the opposite. Okay, so this is where we break the skill down into chunks. So that might be done within one training session, or it might be done over a few training sessions. So then that's to use rest breaks. So sometimes it's for mental rehearsal. It's used for that, to sort of go through in your head and to allow your brain to process what's just happened, what you've just learned. Sometimes it's just to give your body a physical break because the new skill you're learning is quite difficult. Usually used by sports people of a lower ability or less experience, and usually used for complex skills. So trying to think of an example I've used. One that comes to my head that I've used semi-recently is when I go on a trampolining teacher's refresher course. So I have to do one of those every 3 years just to make sure I'm still up to speed, when I'm teaching you a lesson and everything's safe and I'm teaching you all the new techniques and practices. So I went on that. It was a full day. So it was like from 8:30 till 4:30. So a proper sesh of a day, really. And trampolining is not really my first sport, so front somersaults I could do one ages ago, but I'd need to learn it again. So we were going through this, and I went on the trampoline for maybe a minute at a time, and then Mrs. Wilson was there as well, and Mrs. Williams was there, and we sort of took in turns around the trampoline watching each other. So we did that for about 40 minutes, but then it taxes your brain, really, so it takes a while. So we went away. I think we had lunch or something, nothing too heavy, because I was doing somersaults, and then we came back to do it. So and when I came back after lunch to practice it again, I was better the second time round than I was at the end of the first session, because my brain had time to process the information, my body was more rested, my brain was rested as well. So that's sort of why we do it. Obviously, I would be classed as a lower ability and less experience on the trampoline, so that's why distributed practice was needed for me. What we need to bear in mind is if that was a pro, or even someone who's just really good at trampolining in our class. So let's two names off the top of my head: Ruby and Esther smashed it in my class last time. I wouldn't really need to break it down for them. I went on first just to make sure that it was safe, and then I just sort of left them to it. So for them, they were using more massed practice in trampolining, because they were just practicing their routine, doing it over and over again until they got it right. Whereas some of you who I was teaching the somersault to, I was doing distributed practice with. So even within my lesson, I'm using two different types of practice for different abilities. Yeah. Hopefully that's made sense to you. What I would do if I were you now is I'd pause the video and just make some notes on that. Just maybe quick, almost a quick mind map with master practice written in the middle, circle a couple of lines as to give you an idea and reminders of what each one is. You're going to do 4 in total, so give yourself enough space to do that. What I would also add to those notes, really brief notes, by the way, 2-3 minutes tops. What I would add to those notes is maybe some other sports that you can think of where you would use these types of practices. Okay, so for distributed practice, try and think of some complex skills and what sports you might find them in. Mass practice, try and think of maybe more basic skills where you could do them over and over again without thinking too much. Okay. Before we go on to, bear with me. Before we go on to the next two, stop this little PowerPoint out. There we go. Before we go on to the next two, we're going to try and get our head round massed and distributed first. So have a look at these two pictures. I'm going to shut up for a sec. Which one's which?
So go ahead and do your forward roll, Brittany. Hands down, head down, and roll. And she's going to stretch with her arms above her head. And she's going to do one more for you. Hands down, head down, and she's going to roll and do a big stretch at the end. Next progressional for us is we teach our kids how to do a handstand forward roll. So Emma's going to step up and I'm going to spot. She's going to do her handstand first. So we did teach you how to do those handstands. So she's going to do her handstands nice and tight. She's going to roll into what we call a candle position. And then she's going to go ahead and roll all the way up to her feet. So as you saw, I'm holding her feet and making sure she's nice and tight throughout that entire procedure. Go ahead, Emma. Now she's going to try it on her own. She's going to hold her handstand, push her shoulders nice and tall, and do a nice big roll out of it.
Okay, so I'd like to think you've probably got the hang of which one's which. So the one on the left is sort of a massed practice that within the training session. So this is a practice within the training session. Obviously, that athlete will do more than just those jump shots. But doing this guy's doing it over and over again. He's concentrating, but it's not taxing for him. He's just sort of doing it. He does it day in, day out. I think anyone in our class really could just keep shooting over and over. They might not get it in as much, but it would still be mass practice. They can still do it over and over again. The one on the right, it was hard. It was actually difficult for me to find a video of a distributed practice because if you think about it, I'd actually need to find 3 or 4 different videos over time. Yeah, split up. This was the best one I could find. Now, these girls here are actually, you can tell they're quite good at gymnastics already, so they probably don't need too much of distributed practice, but this is a YouTube tutorial, so the coach is actually breaking down the session there. So for each one of those things you've just seen, let me try and go back to it.
Hands go on the ground. Her head is going to tuck.
We'll turn it down. So if you notice, just like a low organized skill, she's breaking the technique down into different parts. So you're starting to see now which skills are benefited by which practices. Yeah. So she's breaking it down into different parts. So maybe for half an hour of a practice or of a training session, I knew that was going to happen. I do that all the time. So they might practice that first bit. So the first presenting bit, and then for the next bit, they might practice, for the next half an hour, they might practice a forward roll, for example. And then if you notice the next bit, let me just try and skip ahead, they might
so we did teach you how to do
practice handstands for half an hour and break it up.
So she's going to do her handstands nice and tight.
And then
she's going to roll into what we call a candle position.
They might practice that candle position there. Okay, so they could separate that out across the day. They could separate that out across a couple of hours of their training session. If they're really low ability, they might even do that across, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks, a month, whatever. Okay, until they are safe to learn the next stage. Okay, just an extension thought: which one's high or low organization? where my open, closed, basic and complex skills come into this. It's always good to try and link those in and think about them, because I wouldn't be surprised if an exam question, there's not been one yet, but if an exam question started to cross these two topics over. Okay, next two. So we've got fixed and variable practice. So much like the skills, the two, I've done 2 and 2, so they go hand in hand, really. They don't, so you either do fixed or variable. It's not, you can't really do both, and you can't do massed or distributed together either. It's one or the other. So it's either fixed or variable. So once again, let's actually look into what the words mean here before, so we can actually guess what the definition is going to be before we see it. It will help our understanding. So that word fixed, a fixed practice, a fixed training session, what might it mean like that? When something's fixed, it's set in place, or you actually mend something, but I don't think it's going to be this time, will it? So it's maybe something set in place. Not too sure how much more we can read into that, but it starts to give us an idea. Variable is when things change. So we're starting to see how they are opposites here, actually, aren't we? So variable, when things are moved, can be changed around. I'm starting to get an idea here. Let's have a look. So with a fixed practice, it's the same practice, same situation over and over again. So nothing's changed. It's the same thing. So if you see this guy in an arcade, he's the machine, isn't he? Look at him just over and over again. He's throwing that basketball into the hoop. There's no variables in there. You might have heard that phrase in science. A variable is where something can come in and change it, change the scenario, change the situation. In this, there's no there's nothing to distract him there, apart from loads of noises of the arcade, or possibly a mate putting him off or something. But for this, let's just say there's nothing there. It's the same thing over and over again. All right. So we've heard a lot of things that cross over with the skills there. So closed skills are usually practiced this way. So where there's no other distractions. So we're thinking tennis serve. We're thinking golf swing, swimmer in a lane, possibly sort of down that end of the spectrum, down that end of the continuum. And this is the same here. Obviously, if this was a game, it would be an open skill, because there'd be someone there to put him off if he was shooting into a basket, unless it was a free throw. But in a practice, this is fixed, this is closed. Okay. And it's often referred to as a drill. Yeah. So when we set up drills, you're not affected by anyone else. The opposite is variable. So this is for people who are practicing a technique in different situations, and it's useful for practicing open skills. So I'm trying to think of a different example than this arcade one. So let's say if this guy on the last slide here, so this guy doing the free throws, was that's a fixed practice there. But if he was just to move around if you can look where my mouse is there, the edge of the 3-point line there, it would start to become a variable practice, because he's doing it from a different scenario, but using the same skill. Okay. But a variable practice is more where maybe an opponent would come in there. So his teammate here would come in and try to put him off, maybe to send him a different way, so he's got to shoot from somewhere else. And that's where it becomes more open, because his opponent is telling him where he needs to go.
We do our forward
Okay. So hopefully you got the hang of that. Now we're going to try and put that into practice. I'm trying to get myself out of the way here. I don't think I can. Let's see if that works. So in your books, I'm not going to put this one on Teams, but I'm trusting you guys to make notes on this and answer these questions. So I've asked you to sort of add on your continuum if you see any more skills that you might see. Don't worry about that unless you want to go back to your last notes and just add some in. Don't worry about that one too much. We're going to mainly look in this video at number 2, 3, and 4. So describe a drill where in the video where there's a fixed practice being used, and why is that fixed? Number 3, what part of the video is variable? Where are things changing? Where are teammates or opponents giving different scenarios to the goalkeeper here? And then is the whole practice itself massed or distributed? All right, so bit of thinking to do there, but I'll talk you through it with you. So I'm going to pause it there.
He's going to roll it.
I'm going to go back. Right. So that goalkeeper, that England goalkeeper there, I don't actually know the name of that goalkeeper there, but the goalkeeper, this is an FA drill, an England drill. If you notice, it's the same. That same thing has been repeated a few times there, and the ball is going to the same sort of spot just in front of her head there, for her to catch the ball. Then she does the same thing. She throws it to the side and then receives the same next one again. So for me, that one's fixed. Yeah. So it gives you an idea of what you're looking for. I'm going to give you a chance to think about this for yourself now. So I'm going to shut up for a minute, watch the video, and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
That one in there. Good. Set. Good. Punch. Okay. He's going to roll into me. You're going to get a cross into here, and then you're going to get a side foot.
Solid. Nice. Oh, great save.
What save?
Oh,
What the save? Yeah, great save. What a save. Great save. Come on, get this shit!
oh, yeah!
Straight touch. Yeah, fine. Quick finish. Quick finish. Second finish. One touch. Oh! Touch. Get there. On the defending. Finish. Good second. Yeah, brilliant.
Still don't like it.
Great save.
Nice, man.
Finish, get there. Great, 7 seconds, good. Finish. Oh.
All right, I'm not going to watch the end of it. For me, you could put fixed and variable practice on a bit of a continuum, really, just like we did with the skills. I would be very surprised if they asked you to do that in an exam, because it's not on the spec to do that like it is with the skills. But for me, that session then started at fixed and then went gradually towards variable to me. So you can sort of see it as a continuum there. I'll show you what I mean. So when we saw this session here where the coach was throwing it at the goalkeeper, the same thing was happening over and over again. There was nothing that was going to surprise the goalkeeper, really. She was receiving the ball in the same place. So that's fixed. That's pretty spot on. And then, so that's a closed skill situation. And then the more we go on, and this is why, because a closed and open skills on a continua, you can see why fixed and variable would be as well. The more we go on, let's have a look here again.
Nice.
it's still the same scenario, isn't it? The coach is kicking the ball from the edge of the area towards the goal with those inflatables there. The goalkeeper's trying to save it. So it's the same thing over and over again. But there's one thing for me that's different there, and you've probably worked it out yourself, which is the ball's not always going to the same place now. So for me, that moves up the continuum towards variable. Yeah. So you see that's gone down to the left, whereas the last one, and that one's gone top right. So you see it's different. It's not exactly the same, but it's the same scenario. Okay, so it's still, for me, that's still pretty fixed, but a little bit more variable. Okay, let's skip ahead. This one takes it a little bit of a step further. So now the goalkeeper doesn't know where the ball's going to go. She may have to run to the side here. She may have to run that way. She may have to save something in the goal there. So again, it's still the same scenario, same practice over and over again. So it's still fixed for me, but because there's more of a chance of it going a little bit differently, for me that goes more, it's a more of an open skill, so it's going more towards variable again. For me, probably still just about fixed, maybe in the middle of the continuum, you could argue. Some people might argue the other side, and if you had a good argument, I'd probably listen to it. Okay, so let's skip ahead. So for me, the most variable one was this one, because the goalkeepers didn't know when they were going to receive the shot. But it's still the same practice over and over again. So it's still, you can still argue it's still fixed, but they don't know when they're going to receive that shot. You see, so it's going to different areas there. For me, there isn't a full variable practice in here. If we were to keep watching that, those goalkeepers would probably go then to play with the open field, the rest of the team, and they might be put into sort of similar game scenarios. So when we see the game scenarios, that's when the open skills come more into play, which means it's more of a variable practice. So they might be putting goals and play some small-sided games. That's going to be a variable practice. Yeah. Okay. Hopefully that's made sense to you there. With fixed and variable, my tip would be, I know loads of you like writing down my tips. My tip would be fixed and variable. Think of the skill. So what skill is it? Is that a closed skill? Is it an open skill? And that will help you decide whether it's fixed or variable. Most of the time, that is a good thing to go off. Okay. And then my fourth question was, is the whole practice massed or distributed? What do we think? For me, that's more of a massed session, because they've not needed to distribute anything over time or over days. It looks like they had a bit of a break, but probably more because the bodies were tired. How I know this is because these are skills that they knew yesterday, they knew the day before, they knew last year. They're getting better at the skills still, but they don't need to break them down anymore. Their brain knows them already. So nothing too complex. And again, ask yourself the question, are they using basic skills or complex skills? They're more basic skills, especially them, because they're professionals. So that's how we know that's probably more of a master session. So hopefully you're starting to piece together how these skills match up with different practice structures. Okay. If you've not got the hang of that yet, go back and just have a listen to what I'm saying again. Try and get your head around it. It's worth spending that 5 minutes to save yourself another hour in the future of revision. Can't speak. Okay. So I've tried to keep the lesson a little bit shorter, or at least the tasks shorter for you today, because this is your only task. I've put this on Teams for you to do with a one quick exam question on there, a one marker. So that'll take 30 seconds. And all you've got to do in this one is we're just going to test our knowledge of what you've just learned. So state an example and when a coach might use each of these practice structures that we've learned today to improve a player's performance. So I don't want you to use football because we've just used that. Basketball, I'll let you use gymnastics if you want because that plays into this quite a lot, but no basketball, no football. And then I want you to explain why they would do this too. So I'll just give you a quick example. If I go down, so this is the sheet. There's your one quick question. So mass practice. So let's, in fact, do fixed instead. So, so you just say something really as simple as a coach I'm going to do basketball because I told you not to do it, so you can't nick my example. A coach using a set shot practice in basketball, and I'll just put from the same position so it's properly fixed. Yep. All right, but that'll be 1 mark. Okay. Just spelled from wrong. So that's 1 mark, and then we need to explain why to get the 2nd mark here. Okay, so so they will do this because, and well, why are they doing it? Have a think. So they're professionals. Why do they need to practice it all the time? They already know what they're doing. They don't do well. They do know what they're doing, but they still need to practice it. They can still forget the skills because they need to keep their skills sharp, so that their brain can use these just as effectively in a game situation. What is wrong with my typing today? Okay, so you've got those there. That's your 2 marks. I don't want you to go mad with this one. I gave you a bit of a longer lesson on Monday, so I'm being kind to you. So you don't have to go mad with this. So that's all you're going to do. You don't delete mine, and then you've got put your own in. Okay, and then 8 marks. Submit it. I'll have a look at it. I'll give you the big thumbs up, and then we'll see you on Monday for your next lesson. Enjoy, guys.